This conference will now be recorded.
Like we're not paying ever.
I don't know. Maybe.
Okay. So let's talk about chapter 13. And now we lost Logan and Megan on our audio, on our video, I mean.
We can hear you. I don't know what's going on.
We can hear you. I don't know what's going on here. See if I can fix it.
Well, as long as you can at least, there we got you back.
Yeah, okay. Sorry.
Okay, so on page 157, chapter 13 is entitled Break Free from Unhealthy Thinking. There's sometimes that some of the things we do, and we can think things that aren't necessarily true. And if you take a look at page 160, there's an exercise there where you have 18 statements where in the left-hand column you mark whether this statement is true for you, and in the right-hand column you mark this is true for my spouse. Now, one little caution, when you get to your marriage staff meeting and you start sharing, this is what I thought was true for you. For example, the first one, Logan, if you say that Megan sees things pretty much as black and white, excuse me, then just take it as an opinion, okay? And it may not necessarily be what you feel, but maybe it could be true. But don't get into a big argument over it, okay? It's just an opinion, okay? So once you've made answered or marked all of these 18, then you get down to putting together a little, on page 161, it says, look over each of the statements that were true for you, then chart below gives the questions that match the 6 unhealthy thinking patterns. Find the items that you agreed with, then identify which thinking patterns the statement represents. So you can see that for a polarizer, questions 1, 7, and 13, magnifier 2, 8, and 14, etc., etc. Okay, so if you, let's say on a polarizer, if you just have one of those numbers circled, I would say it's probably that you're not a polarizer. If you have 2, there's a good chance you are. If you have 3 circled, yeah, chances are you really are a polarizer, okay? Now, if you are a polarizer, a magnifier, a personalizer, a generalizer, an emotional reasoner, or a minimizer, it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference. It's just kind of very similar to a chapter where you looked at games that we played. Games that we play as, what was that, chapter 9? Do you remember that one? The marital games that we sometimes play. That don't take this little exercise too seriously. I think, for example, that in general, I would say that quite often a lot of females have been magnifiers, and when we've talked about it, and a lot of males have been minimizers. So it's possibly very often that you might, for example, as a male, say to your gal, don't make such a big deal out of this, okay? But it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference if you are one of these. It's just that basically bottom line is that they can, if that is a very common thing in your relationship, any one of these six, then it is a way that can hinder good communication. A way that hinders, if you are a personalizer, for example, you take things personally all the time, that can hinder your honest, open, vulnerable communication. You just take things you personalize them, and you don't take them, and you take them as personal attacks on you. So the thing I like about this chapter is that it talks about, if you take a look at page 163, it talks about the destructiveness of personalizing. So for each one of these six little categories, it talks about the destructiveness of each one of them and how it can cause damage in your communication, in your relationship. But then one of the things that you follow up with is on page 165. Okay, now that I know that I'm a personalizer, how can I, on page 165, what steps can I come to overcome personalizing? Okay, and the first one that it talks about there is identify unhealthy self-talk. We've talked about unhealthy or negative self-talk before, where we think something negative and that snowballs. But if you give yourself positive self-talk and tell yourself that's not true, you can overcome the personalizing. And then on page 167, it's got the destructiveness of magnifying, being a magnifier or making a mountain out of a molehill, and the damaging effect that it can have on your communication. And then on page 169, it talks about steps to overcoming being a magnifier. And it goes on like that with overgeneralizing. Overgeneralizing basically is history always repeats itself. In other words, he used to do that. He's always going to do it. Okay. You make a mistake one time and your partner just always then thinks you're going to continue to make that same mistake. In other words, history repeats itself. You did it once, you're always going to do it. And then on page 173, you've got the destructiveness of emotional reasoning, which is interpreting feelings as facts. Another offshoot of that, by the way, is interpreting dreams as facts. I counseled a couple one time where whenever she had a dream about her husband, typically the next day she wouldn't talk to him because he had treated her badly in her dream. And that's totally way out there, but it happens. Some people do believe in dreams. I personally don't take any stock in dreams. I think there's just sometimes the way our mind rolls when we're asleep. But emotional reasoning is when you interpret feelings. In other words, you feel that this is true, and so it's a fact. And another couple one time where they had just gotten married. It was a young couple, and they just gotten married. And about a month later, they wanted to meet with me, and so we met. And he had a lot of girlfriends before they got married. So she felt a month into their marriage that he still wanted to see his old girlfriends, and he totally reassured me personally to me in quiet, just with the two of us talking, that this was not anywhere close to true. She just felt like, because he had always been had several girlfriends, that wanted to continue having several girlfriends. Just because she felt it, it was true, okay? Then on page 175, the destructiveness of polarizing, which is seeing everything as black and or white. Some people, sometimes we can see things as there's only one way. I mean, this is the way it is because it's either black or white. There's no room for a middle ground, or there's no room also for, if you say black and your partner says white, there's no room for discussion. You think black, okay, and you won't let it go. And then on page 177, or on page 176, steps to overcoming polarizing. They've got, by the way, some in the steps to overcoming polarizing there. It has how to identify unhealthy self-talk. It says begin by keeping a self-talk journal, recording the incidents of polarizing in your daily life, if you can recognize it, of course. Analyze what you were thinking that prompted your response. Your journal page may look something like this. On 4:1, my project was criticized. The belief system or self-talk is I knew I would fail at it, and the consequences is I'm angry at myself and the critic, and I'm depressed for days. So that's a journal of the polarizing that took place in this person's life, and it helps once you identify the unhealthy self-talk. You see that, for example, in this case, the person, just because the project was criticized, thought that they were a failure, and so he or she was angry and depressed. That can cause some damage. So you need to dispute that faulty thinking. And on page 177, replace I knew I'd fail at this with my work wasn't perfect, but it was more adequate and I can improve. Or other things that you could say is it really doesn't matter. It's in the scheme of life, a little project like that doesn't really mean a whole lot of beans. It's just a little small thing and it's no big deal. So I just wanted to point that out to you just to show you some of the how to identify the unhealthy self-talk and how to dispute the faulty thinking and how to enjoy new responses. And then you've got on page 177 the destructiveness of selective abstraction, which is an offshoot of polarizing, which is missing the forest through the trees. In other words, you don't see the beauty of certain things because you're focusing on one certain thing. And then on page 179, the destructiveness of minimizing. If I think recently I've been a couple of times I've talked about during a marriage ceremony about magnifiers and minimizers, and like I said before, generally speaking, females tend to maximize and males tend to minimize. So I've instructed the males to never say, "Don't make such a mountain out of a molehill," because it won't go very far, will it, Logan? If you said that. Okay, so that's the effects of minimizing. Okay, so that's the chapter, but um, yeah, so then you've got your marriage staff meeting before we meet again next week, and that'll be the final session. And what we'll do next week is I'll take all of the chapters that you have not done, and I'm just going to briefly go through each one of them just to briefly explain each one to you. So it won't take very long, but like I said, it'll just be a quick overview of the chapters we've missed. Any thoughts? Any questions on this chapter in particular, or any other things going on in your lives?
No?
Nope, everything's good.
Yeah.
I finally made the decision, just to tell you something that's going on in my life. I finally made the decision to retire from the church. I have been since 2007 just part-time or half-time, which meant basically 20 hours a week, but I typically worked 40 to 60. So I finally sat down and talked with my senior pastor, and I'm down to now 10 hours, and it's definitely 10. Um, 'Cause it, it was taking its toll on me, and I would like to focus more on weddings than I would doing things at the church. By the way, things I did at the church were basically administrative, uh, to include repairs. Um,
Mhm.
I, re- I repaired a sprinkler system today. I repaired a faucet in the sink today. You know, that those sort of things, plus administrative things, accounting, bookkeeping, um, things like that. So I've cut back so that I can focus a lot more on weddings, which is my first love.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, I'm excited. So that takes effect January 1st. So it was because of all of the things I'm cutting back on. They're going to have to hire other people to replace me to do some of those things. So I had to cut back about 75% on my salary to do it. So, but I don't care. I'd rather do the weddings.
Cool.
Right.
Logan and Megan, what did you guys? We didn't talk to you about your Thanksgiving. What did you guys do for Thanksgiving?
We went home to visit family. Both of our families live in the same small town, so we traveled to go see them, and we had a good time.
And where's that?
Eureka, Nevada,
Oh wow,
close to the Utah border.
yeah. It's way out
Yeah.
there. What is that? About
It is.
7 hours?
It's not quite that far. About 4.
4? That's all?
Yeah, not too bad.
So you go out 82 to Elko and then go south from there?
You can go that way. It's just a little
Oh,
bit
no.
longer.
I know now. It's on 50, isn't it?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Go through Austin and bunch of other small towns. So.
What's the population of your guys' town?
Well, we live in Reno, so I don't know that size, but I think Eureka, like 1,700 people.
Oh,
I was going to
It's pretty
say
small.
it's pretty small.
Uh,
So both of your sets of parents live out there?
yeah, they do.
And what do they do out there?
My dad's retired. My mom owns a cleaning business in town, and Megan's dad works for a mining company as a manager, I think, right? He's a manager. And then her mom owns her own small business. She makes things.
What did your dad do before he retired?
He was a police officer for 27 years. I think
In Eureka?
26 years. What's that?
In Eureka?
All over Nevada.
All over?
So,
Oh.
hmm
By the way, you said your mom owned a cleaning business?
Yeah, that's what she does now. She used to work at the Eureka courthouse, but since then she started her own cleaning business. So
Is that house cleaning?
it's county buildings. She cleans all the county buildings in Eureka. So like courthouse, sheriff's office, annex buildings like that, administrative buildings.
Uh-huh. Wow, 1,700 people.
Yeah, it's pretty small. Everybody knows everybody.
when I was in the 7th grade, we lived in a little town on the Feather River. You know where the Feather River is, right? From out of Quincy.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Halfway between Quincy and Oroville was a little town called Story, and there was 17 families. We lived there for a year.
Wow.
And that was kind of interesting. Whenever we needed food, we had typically, most of the time, we went shopping in Reno. So it was 40 miles to go shopping. But it was fun as a kid. I had a great time fishing and hunting and rafting on the river. It was great. Well, we will then